Quote of the month. Once we understand ourselves, the rest of living falls in line. From the March 1956 Grapevine. The sanest I've ever been. An alcoholic's daughter finds her own program. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over, but expecting a different result, I said. The other kids stared at me, obviously confused by my answer. That's one way to look at it, Aaron, but that's not exactly what we're talking about here. I was in 5th period Introduction to Psychology class, and I had just made a total fool of myself. Not that that was uncommon. I habitually showed up to class intoxicated in one way or another, and often said ridiculous things. My mother entered Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 11 years old, and although every girl supposedly gets words of wisdom and advice from her parents, everything I got was out of the big book. Hence, my definition of insanity, one of my mother's favorite AA quotes, was a little different from the one we were discussing in class. I loved my mother very much, but I had mixed feelings about AA. I didn't see how AA worked in her. Life at home was hard, and she was emotionally abusive. I desperately wanted her love and acceptance, but I wanted her to accept me for what I was, a bright, sensitive, and creative alcoholic and addict. She wanted me to stop being a manipulative, drama-filled, self-pitying alcoholic and addict. Neither of us could accept the other, and I had a hard time believing that AA was a good program if it created psychopaths like her. I pretended to hate the fact that my mother was never home. "You care more about your stupid meetings than you care about your kids," I would scream. In reality, every time she left for a meeting, it meant that I had an hour and 40 minutes to get high and relax for a while. So that's what I did. How sweet it was. The first time I ever had a drink, I wasn't a freshman yet. I was enrolled in a Jump Start, a program at the high school where kids who just graduated from junior high could take a high school course over the summer. 4 days before it was over, some boys were sipping from a big glass juice bottle. For some reason, I was drawn to them. They looked like they were having a great time. They told me that there was vodka in the juice. "Let me get some," I squealed, and down the hatch it went. "We better throw this away," one of the boys mumbled. "I don't want to get busted." But all I could think was, I don't feel anything. Back in class, the boys still seemed to be having a rollicking good time, whereas I felt nothing. "May I be excused?" I asked, raising my hand. I left the classroom and headed for the trash can where they had thrown the bottle. I sifted through the garbage. Smart boys that they were, they'd helpfully covered the drink with crumpled paper and sandwich crusts, and then I grabbed it and drank some more. I stuck the still half-full bottle in my backpack and went back to class. Within 5 minutes, we were all caught, suspended, and the liquor was taken away. This was a tough one to explain to my mom. "How do you not realize that this is alcoholic drinking?" she yelled. "You dug it out of the garbage." I felt nothing except self-pity because she told me that besides being an alcoholic, I was grounded. I cried, "I'll go to AA. I know you and Dad were alcoholics. I know it's hereditary. I'm sorry. I'll never drink again." She told me that if I wanted to go to AA, I would have to get there on my own, and she would not drive me. My stepfather dropped me off at an AA meeting, and I was terrified. For the next 4 years, I didn't touch a drop. Incidentally, if you ask my mother what happened that day, she says she dropped me off at the meeting and made me work all 12 steps in one day. My mother is a little touched. Anyway, throughout high school, I refrained from drinking booze and told people, "I can't drink because I'm an alcoholic. Got any pills?" That's right. I knew my limits, and I vowed that for the rest of my life I was sticking to drugs. And there were a lot of drugs to be had. But eventually I started drinking again, and that's when things really went downhill. When I was 17, on my graduation day, my mother requested that I live elsewhere. That was fine with me, although my feelings were hurt. I moved in with my boyfriend's family, started going to college, and got a part-time job with a very large retail chain. Within weeks, I was drinking every night until I passed out. My friends and I often stole the alcohol. We had money, we just weren't old enough to buy it. It was the system's fault, not ours. Incomprehensible demoralization is a great way to describe my behavior during those years. I overdosed, cut myself with kitchen knives, and hurt, irritated, and embarrassed all of my friends over and over and over. One time I got stoned on dog tranquilizers, pulled my pants down in front of my boss at work, and fell over. That was a blast. I broke up with my boyfriend and got a new boyfriend, not necessarily in that order. I suddenly found myself with nowhere to live. After drinking for 3 years, I had become homeless, lost my car, dropped out of school, and lost my job. The job had offered to send me to rehab on the company dime, but I thought, how could they be so rude? Eventually, my new boyfriend moved me into his parents' home. I was very proud to have found a new job and to have learned to control my drinking. Who knew that 2 bottles of wine and a 6-pack would be socially acceptable? I felt like a new woman, kicking the hard stuff. The bottom line was I loved to drink. It was my reason for getting up in the morning. I looked forward to it all day. I loved nothing more than drinking until I passed out. It was all I really knew how to do. Alcohol became my definition. My boyfriend ended up getting 2 DUIs and having to go to rehab. I was devastated and cried every night that he was gone. His parents were very loving and let me stay with them, rent-free, even though he was away. One night he called. Aaron, what do you think about this whole rehab thing? I think we should actually try it. I was furious. The thought of not drinking was like the thought of not breathing. I never denied being an alcoholic. I knew what I was from day one, and so did he. I put it all out there on the table, and now he expected me to change? However, through my anger, I could see that I did love him, so I snapped, fine, you're in there for 3 months, so I'll quit the day you come home. Unfortunately, the seed had been planted. For whatever reason, drinking was not fun anymore. All of a sudden, I wanted to stop drinking, so after a couple of nights of drunk dialing the AA hotline, I finally got to a meeting. As soon as it was over, I sped home and downed a few. My boyfriend called me and I told him that I'd gone to a meeting and was quitting drinking, with a beer in hand, of course. The next morning, I felt horribly guilty. Throughout the day, I told a bunch of people that I had quit drinking. I was visiting my friend at the job I had gotten fired from, and I told her that I had quit. But alcohol was still all I could think about. A young guy came out back to smoke a cigarette on his break, and he was drinking an energy drink. I immediately asked him if he had ever tried a certain type of energy drink that had booze in it. Nope, I haven't even seen that one, he said. I felt like I was losing my mind. I didn't want to drink, but I was obsessed. That night, I was heading home in tears, knowing that I did not want a beer, but I couldn't get home fast enough to have one. As I drove, I remembered that at that one meeting I went to, they mentioned a 10 o'clock meeting on Thursday nights. What day is it? What day is it? Oh God, please let it be Thursday. It was, but I was already 15 minutes late. I screeched my car in a U-turn and headed for the meeting place. It was a candlelight meeting, and I felt so grateful to be there. I didn't want it to end. I was fearful of what I would do when I got home. As I was heading out the door, I felt a tap on my shoulder and heard a voice say, "Hey, aren't you the girl from outside my work today?" It was the energy drink guy. I burst into tears and collapsed right there. I couldn't believe it. He introduced me to his sponsor, who told me to go to the meeting the next night so I could meet his wife, because I needed a sponsor too. Somehow that night I didn't drink, and I haven't for 14 months. The candlelight meeting man's wife agreed to be my sponsor, and I burst into tears when I met her too. It wasn't that difficult for me to admit that I was an alcoholic, because I had always admitted it, and the fact that my life was unmanageable was apparent. The hardest parts for me were steps 2 and 3, because I was raised as an atheist. It took me 2 days to go from being a complete and utter atheist to having a higher power. I believed in karma. I believed in positive and negative energy. I believed in good and bad in the universe. I started praying to good. I wrote out my resentments, made a list of people that I owed amends to, and started paying people back for what I had taken from them, financially and emotionally. This program works because I really got honest and gave it my all. I am 22 years old and I am going to keep working my program to the best of my ability. It is the sanest that I have ever been. Aaron H., Concord, California.